Crimson Desert has won. It's massive, people love it, and it's just getting better with time. Crimson Desert will easily go down in history as one of the best yet controversial games that has ever been created. And as the controls get better and simplified and better in general, well, more people are going to probably play Crimson Desert. So it is a train that you should be on.
How do I talk about this one?
Is he going to talk about the chosen ones? What?
Crimson Desert has to be the best worst game that I have ever played. It is utterly magnificent, yet a complete train wreck at the exact same time. I have multiple times yelled out in frustration that I am done with this. This game is absolute garbage. Thrown my controller down, only then to go and play it for the rest of the night. I hate this game, and I absolutely love it. I thought that Marathon was
understandable, honestly, because the thing with Crimson Desert is there are some bosses that always do the same thing in the same pattern. And yet, sometimes they don't, which is so strange.
Going to be polarizing. This is the most controversial game that we have seen in years. And for the first time, everybody's divided over it, and it has nothing to do with social politics or monetization or anything other than the gameplay.
Well, actually, $70 is too much, even for Crimson Desert. It should have been $40. Let's be absolutely real about it. Crimson Desert is not worth $70. It's true. It's worth 40, maybe 50 if we're pushing it, because no game is worth $70 at this point, except GTA, which is going to be worth $1,000 because I'm joking, obviously, I'm joking. GTA 6 should be free at this point, with every red flag that we have about it. But, I mean, yeah, not a lot of games are worth the money.
It just comes down to a relatively good game that you have to walk through barbed wire, broken glass, and razor blades to be able to enjoy it. Some people are going to walk that path. Others are going to want to have nothing to do with it. Both are completely valid. This game is both elevated.
One is, though, significantly weaker than the other.
By and a victim of its own ambition. This game just does so much. And whether it's this game's controls or its combat or its narrative or whatever it might be, these developers tried to make an everything game. And in that, they made something so incredibly flawed. And in an industry that is so afraid of risk, I have to respect that. I really do. So today, I want to talk about my experience with Crimson Desert. I want to talk about how polarizing this game has been for the gaming community, and
Okay, listen, it's not polarizing. I just want to throw that out, okay? At this point, I have checked out a lot of complaints that people have had about this game. A lot of people who left this game, and for what reason they left this game. And that is because they're too fucking stupid to learn the jump button combination. That is because they literally fail on the first Sky Island puzzle where you're just supposed to put in the thing like a plug. Deep breaths. Ooh, it's fine. It's fine. But yes, the people who, at this point, I'm totally convinced, by the way, there is no excuse for the people who think that Crimson Desert is just too hard in some way, or unfair, or unintuitive, or the controls are too hard. After everything, every single video that I have watched at this point, for people why they quit Crimson Desert, what they didn't like about it, I am convinced we are looking at the bad part of the IQ distribution scale at this point. I am 100% convinced of that. There is no way you can tell me that the first puzzle in the game was too hard. No, you're too stupid.
I also want to talk about how, for all of its flaws, I dare anybody to try to do better. So I'm going to start off by saying this. Crimson Desert is almost exactly what I expected it to be, and that's probably why I'm a little bit more forgiving when it comes to this game, at least compared to most people. For well over a year, every single time they showed off this game, it just kept getting bigger. More mechanics, more systems, more characters, more everything, and every time I saw...
This is hilarious because they actually pulled it off. You know why this actually is very meaningful? Because from insider leaks that seem to be trustworthy-ish at the bare minimum, at least one of two, we have insider information that the people high up when making Crimson Desert were literally like, "Oh, Zelda has Sky Islands and people like it. Put him in, put him in, put him in, Wong." Then people saw the Monster Hunter eat food thing. Oh, put that in, Wong. By the way, it's a different Wong. No, actually, no, it's Korea. So, most of their names will be Sonju Wong. Close enough, though. Not kidding. By the way, look it up. The statistics for the naming scheme of Korea are pretty wild. It is funny. In any case. Not emphasizing anything there, by the way. It is by what 2040 it's expected that half the surnames are gonna be the same in Korea. By the way, that's the same in every country. The most popular surnames are slowly beginning to dominate, but in places like Korea and China, it's super accelerated, which is Park. In Korea, it's gonna be Park. That's a surname, by the way. The more you know. Who told you that this is not an educational channel? But in any case, the people in charge of Crimson Desert, whenever they saw a game and people talking about the mechanic of the game being cool, they would literally put that in right now. And then they got a mishmash of all these systems. Which is, by the way, great. I wish more games did this. And some games have attempted this, and it always boggles my mind, like, how do you mess it up? There have been so many games that have attempted to do similar or copy mechanics of other popular games, and they just fuck it up. Crimson Desert finally just proves how easy it is to take a mechanic, to take a concept from another game, and just put it in and make it good enough. At the bare minimum, good enough. And yet so many other games just are incapable of even stealing correctly.
That I kept thinking the same thing. There's going to be a cost for this, because whenever a game tries to do this much, something always ends up giving, and it's usually the same two things. It's controls and writing. So going in, I was already expecting this game to have rough controls and generally generic storytelling. That wasn't really a surprise to me. The only question was, how bad was it going to be? And more importantly, whether or not this actually sinks the game. And honestly, those two concerns got answered pretty quickly. Now, before this game launched, and honestly, this is where a lot of the drama started, there was a very clear split between the people that were talking about it. You had content creators who had experienced the game in previews that were being mostly positive, leaning towards what the game does well and kind of brushing past some of the rough edges, while journalists went completely in the opposite direction, hammering their frustrations and downplaying the highs. And
nothing strange about that. IGN 6 out of 10 is pretty much goating material every single time.
The review numbers reflect that split in a weird way. On Metacritic, out of the 67 positive reviews, only 3 of them came from major outlets, while about 30% of those reviews, mostly from those same outlets, dragged that score below an 80. Now, at first, I thought this was just going to be another Black Myth or a Stellar Blade situation where critics and players are just living in completely different realities, but after digging into it, that's not actually what's happening here. This game is just genuinely divisive.
Nope. It is. Legendary drops in the first 3 minutes already has the complete wrong understanding of what's happening here. It is. The journal, again, I have consumed a lot of videos where journalists talk about Crimson Desert, where people vent their frustrations. Okay? I may be a React channel, but at the end of the day, I do watch a lot of videos talking about this and get a lot of opinions in, so I can talk about these subjects properly. And that is one of the things. The game critics are literally afraid of no hand-holding. And they don't understand fundamentally what's happening. Most of the game critics are literally too stupid to use a brazier properly because it's somehow complicated.
Across the board, but just not for the same reasons. Because, well, the things that people agree on are actually pretty consistent. Exploration and combat, most people really love that stuff, but where it breaks down is actual priorities. A lot of the critics are focused on the storytelling and writing or their frustrations for the review process itself. IGN is a really good example of this. They spent a noticeable chunk of their coverage just talking about their experiences with Pearl Abyss rather than actually just sticking to...
Yes, and how hard it is to understand a game that doesn't hold your hand. Are you doing things correctly? What a disappointment.
The game. Players,
these are the people who 20 years ago would have given Skyrim a 3 out of 10.
On the other hand, don't seem to really care about any of that. They're just locked into the moment-to-moment stuff, the controls, the menus, the inventory, the itemization, the things that you're actually dealing with while you're playing the game every single second. And that difference in priorities makes a lot of sense. Critics will happily throw away a game that has weak writing, while players are more than happy to scrape by if it's a good adventure. Something that I think is very clearly reflected in how this game actually sold. Because despite how split this conversation was, this game still showed up. It launched to around 240,000 concurrent players, and even with people complaining all over the place, it still climbed up over the weekend, pushing closer to 250,000 concurrent players and selling over 2 million copies in its first 24 hours. It also launched to mixed reviews on Steam, which really wasn't all that surprising, but once people sat with it for a little bit longer, that score started to creep up. Now it's sitting at mostly positive, around 80%, and I don't really think that's where it's going to stop. Pretty soon after launch, Pearl Abyss had already responded. They acknowledged a lot of the issues. They said they were going to address some of the control problems. They also followed it up with a pretty big update, tightening a few things up, fixing a bunch of inventory problems, not all of them, at least not yet, and even some small stuff like making sprint work on a single tap instead of having to mash the button like an idiot. Now, while this all sounds minor, for a game like this, that friction adds up fast. And oh boy, is there a lot of friction here. I did not get a review copy for this game. I was not a part of any previews. I have been playing it at the same time as everybody else, and honestly, that is probably for the best, because if I had early access, I might have committed some international crimes against humanity, against whoever designed this control scheme, the UI, and the inventory system. This game feels like you're trying to eat a $100 steak with a spoon. Like you're staying at a luxury hotel where it's only cold water and the lights turn on only if you perfectly clap the guitar solo from Through the Fire and Flames. It's like being on a perfect date with an...
Okay, we get it. You play the guitar. Jesus Christ, every video does not have to be a reminder that you play the guitar and you're into that kind of stuff. Oh...
absolute bitch. It feels like a great game that does not want you to actually enjoy it. You've got a stamina system in combat that you can't even see. The mini-map is shoved into the bottom left-hand corner, completely out of your natural sight line, so it's basically useless unless you stop and stare at it. The menus have menus. You are constantly digging through layers and layers just to find basic information. I am looking up guides for things that shouldn't even need guides, like camp expeditions, because the game just keeps throwing systems.
By the way, there's a lot of people who don't understand that you're supposed to open these things, even though when you read the description, an artifact sealed by an unknown power, a sacred energy can be sensed from it. Slide down the slope, flowing like straight, blah blah. It's like you get these. Obviously, you need to do something with it, dude. Like, obviously you need to do something with this.
Even need guides, like camp expeditions, because the game just keeps throwing systems at you and it just doesn't explain it at all. There are mechanics...
hey, still better than retail World of Warcraft.
...that you're supposed to use that the game never even tells you that exist. Jump Force Palm is used puzzle after puzzle, and the game just never mentions it. I remember I was spending 30 minutes on one of the world puzzles thinking that I was doing something wrong. A voice on the wind kept saying, "Our connection isn't strong enough," which means nothing to me without any context, only for me to find out later that you can't even do certain puzzles until you've progressed further in the story. This game has no feedback on what you were doing wrong.
Well, again, this is a filter. This is a filter. Like this. Like this. Look at this. How many of you have problems understanding that you're supposed to put the thing and put it in? Okay? If you have no tool of putting it in, that means this puzzle needs to be solved later. try jumping on it, try hitting it, try pulling it down or whatever. All of this is reasonable. Like, no normal person actually has a problem with this. That's the reality.
This game has no feedback on what you were doing wrong and right.
Good.
Also, whoever made the spellcasters that fly around while you're fighting 50 enemies on the ground, spamming shadow bolts at you like they're basil juice from Monster Hunter, needs to be drawn and quartered. I hate you. And then there's the controls. My God, the controls. I switched to controller because playing on mouse and keyboard felt like I was learning how to play piano from scratch, and
everyone says mouse and keyboard is better than controller. What the hell?
it's not any better. Every single button is contextual. Everything overlaps. You want to throw out your hook? Well, now you're crouching. You want to slide? Now you're throwing out your hook. You want to try to lock on? Well, now you're blinding somebody with a lantern. You want to parry? Cool. You need to stop locking on to the enemy that you're trying to parry because the lock on is on the parry button. It's insane. I've never seen anything like this before. It's like I got to the point where I was genuinely starting to question myself, like, okay, do I need to take an IQ test? Am I missing something obvious here? Am I just stupid? Or does this game just not want to be played? And that's the part that makes this all so frustrating, because underneath all of that, the reason this game is the way that it is because there is a ridiculous amount of game here, like an overwhelming amount. And the only reason that people are willing to stick through and fight through all of this friction is because of what's on the other side of it. I'll be honest, after just a couple of hours, I was already done. I was ready to drop it, but I locked in and I kept pushing forward. And that's when I started to notice something. For every stretch of frustration, I would get these flashes of brilliance. At first, it was the story. It felt flat, generic. Honestly, it is still hot ass and may as well not even be there. But the more time that I spent with it, the more I kind of liked just being this nobody, just some John Everyman. It started to feel like I was at the beginning of some D&D campaign. I was level 1. I had no clue what was going on. I'm helping a farmer find his cows. I'm clearing out a bandit camp, picking up random people along the way, dragging them out of bars, scraping them off the streets, bailing them out of jail. And somewhere in there, my priorities started to shift. It stopped being about chasing this clean narrative, this structured narrative that we're used to, and it just started to be about a journey. Just existing in this world, moving from situation to the next, and man, there is an adventure to be had here. The game is stunning. The engine is like black magic. The performance, the lighting, the color, the draw distance. You're looking at mountains, clouds, entire towns on the horizon, and you know that you can just point your camera and just go there. No walls, no limits, just go. And yes, I know that the menus in this game and the systems in this game are overwhelming, but that's also why the world ends up feeling endless. There's always something pulling at you. I've mostly just been sticking to the campaign just to unlock things, but it still feels like I'm barely scratching at the surface of this game. There are strongholds to clear, crew members that you can send out on jobs, you can rob a bank, cook, cut trees, hunt, mine, build your base, minigames, puzzles, tournaments, hidden bosses, dungeons. You're never sitting around wondering what to do next. I think that the best way I can describe this game is that it's a toolbox game, not just because the game still needs a lot of work, but also because there is just a ton of stuff that I haven't even touched yet. There are whole systems that I barely...
Well, obviously, there's a lot of game. Like, what is the expectancy for this game? 200 hours at this point or something ridiculous? So, yeah.
Interacted with other characters that I haven't used, and I'm still trying to figure out what my version of this game even looks like, because it's not asking you to use everything.
Oh, by the way, yeah, the fact that I see literally no one use a different character is kind of interesting also.
Just asking you to figure out how you want to play. If you hate puzzles, well, you can go earn skill points through combat or just by engaging with the world. If you don't want to gather resources or anything like that, well, you can just loot enemies, take on bounties, rob people, rob houses, or just buy whatever you need. You don't want to hunt or cook? Go ahead and buy all that too.
Go wear a bandana, a face mask, and go rob a bank.
Get a handle on the controls? Use the environment, kite enemies, heal through all the fights, or just do what I do and give a stone cold stunner to anything that moves. All in all, while Crimson Desert is undeniably and frustratingly a deeply, very deeply flawed game that is going to take time to improve, and likely some of this stuff is never going to improve because it's foundational, those flaws are a consequence.
I'm actually not sure what he's talking about. I'm pretty sure everything about Crimson Desert can be massively improved, by the way.
Of offering everything and more to the player. And the more that I play this game, the more I find, the more I start falling in love. And while I might have to eat this steak with a spoon, I'm definitely not complaining about how it tastes. I hate to say this because this is the worst thing that you could possibly say, and it ultimately does not make a game worth buying, but it does get better the longer that you play it. At least it did for me, and I know it did for a lot of other people. I started off
This is the Starfield. Oh, the game gets really good. The new game +5 and 300 hours in. Yeah, this game actually does, though.
hating the game, and then hating the game even more, and then I started enjoying it. So then I'm not really sure if it's Stockholm Syndrome, but then after a while of still being completely frustrated frequently, I started to love the game. And while I think that it is deeply flawed and still needs a lot of work, I still find it to be utterly brilliant, and it's going to get at least 100 hours out of me. I feel like this game has a lot of deep reverence for past games, especially when it comes to Western games. You can see the flashes of The Witcher, Elder Scrolls, Dragon Age, maybe a little Red Dead Redemption. And, you know, I've seen
I hope Dragon Age, not Veilguard.
A lot of critics that have been bashing the game for it. Look at them copying off of these other games and not even getting it right. And it reminds me a lot of Stellar Blade for that, where Shift Up was getting a lot of criticism for riffing off of Nier Automata, but I don't think that these guys have been getting very far from where their goal is. They're pretty close, man. And in some cases, they're also exceeding what people's expectations would be for some of these games. And it's very obvious that it's coming from a place of respect rather than just being a cheap imitation.
No, Crimson Desert definitely wanted to go the cheap imitation route. They somehow won at that. 100%.
Otherwise, these games wouldn't be as deep as they are, or as thoughtful, or as fun as they are, at least when they're allowed to be. You know, at one point I came to the realization that this was the dream game that I had when I was a kid. The naive dream game that I had when I was a kid. It reminds me when I used to talk to my buddy who also wanted to be in game development when we were kids. We'd write down all these ideas of how we wanted everything from all of our favorite games. And, you know, that's not realistic. That's not how games work out. That's how you end up getting...
It is so.
Scope creep. This game is a victim of that. It's a victim of that dream. It's a victim of that ambition of wanting to make a game that does far too much than it probably should do.
Problems like that arise when the developers don't actually know how they're supposed to build the system and make the system that they're building good. Crimson Desert has a lot of systems, and all of them are good enough. Because either by luck or accident or whatever, they have created systems that are good enough, and that's it. Problems with these systems occur when developers just don't know what they're doing. They don't understand why these systems work, how they're supposed to work, what's the point of them, and things like that. But the moment you have people who understand why, you know, how blacksmithing should work in a game, you can make blacksmithing pretty easily and whatnot, and there's no problem.
But in this case, I actually feel like the benefits outweigh the costs. The reason this game is the way that it is because these guys dared to dream and reach at something that they otherwise shouldn't have. And to achieve that, they had to basically ignore every single industry best practice. And I think more games should do the same. So earlier I mentioned how just a few hours in, I was already ready to put down the game, but I never fully explained why. Yes, this game does look incredible. Yes, the combat is fun and there's a ton of stuff to do, but that's not actually what stopped me. What stopped me was me catching myself in the middle of an internal dialogue being a complete hypocrite. Because while I was playing, I kept thinking to myself over and over, this might be the most inaccessible game I have ever played. It's like it's unlearned every modern gaming convention when it comes to controls, navigation, UI design, gameplay, basic usability. All of this stuff has already been fixed by other developers. And then I even caught myself agreeing with IGN's reviewer. Yes, I know, disgusting, but he was talking about the exact same thing, and then it hit me. Wait a minute. I just made a video not that long ago complaining about how this games industry has gone way too far with accessibility and how every single game is not supposed to be made for everyone. So how am I going to sit here and start complaining about accessibility when this game's lack of it is the exact reason why it can offer so much? Now, I want to be clear, that does not mean this game gets a free pass. There are a ton of obvious fixes here, and to their credit...
Nope. Obviously doesn't get a free pass. Nothing gets a free pass. Even if it does what you want it to do, if there's problems, it does not get a free pass. Crimson Desert does have problems. Everyone knows it. But most of these issues can be solved by, adding 5 IQ points. Anyway, that was Legendary Drops 10 out of 10. Bye!